Chapter 304, Suspicious Group, 4. The backpack Zhao Lijai had used to hold the supplies was her old one. It wasn't big and had several tiers from years of use. When people saw it, they assumed the boy had scavenged it from a trash pile. It took the boy 20 minutes to run to the back of the villa. This area was desolate and used to house the sick. This group came from a small village and didn't know much about the zombie virus. So when people got sick one after another and most of them died from high fever, they thought it was a contagious flu. With the lack of medicine, food and water, no one dared to get sick. Because of this, they isolated the sick in the backyard. The building used to house them was a small warehouse once used by the villa's owner for storage. Before, there had been more than 20 sick people. Now, only 2 remained inside, his sister and their neighbor's brother who had grown up with them. At this moment, only the 3 of them were living in the place. While everyone else was busy packing to leave, the boy had decided to stay behind with his sister and the neighbor brother. When he returned, he quickly locked the door and checked the windows. He had heard about the chief's plan to leave. Without someone to kill those monsters, he didn't know what would happen to the place in the future, so he sealed the windows and blocked the door. Once he was sure they were safe, he opened the backpack and took out the medicine and water. He gave his sister and the neighbor brother water before checking the rest of the contents. There were 12 packs of compressed biscuits, a bag of roasted nuts, 2 packs of chocolate, several protein bars, 4 bottles of medicine for fever and colds, and 10 bottles of water. Aside from those, there were also many small transparent crystals in a side compartment. He didn't know what the crystals were used for, but he had heard they could be used to buy things. When the chief and his team went out to kill monsters, they brought crystals back and exchanged them for food with people who passed by. Knowing how valuable these things were, the boy teared up and muttered, "Thank you, sister." He didn't even know his benefactor's name, but he would remember her face and he would repay her one day. After leaving the compound, the Phantom team drove toward Pingjian City. There was a natural lake near the city called Zhen's Lake. This lake was surrounded by Pingjian City to the southwest, Jingqiu City to the north, and Gusu City to the east. With the lake situated near these 3 cities, after the second rain, mutant animals would go on a rampage in the area. While the danger in this region would increase, they wouldn't have to worry about running out of food, as mutant animals were edible, unlike zombie animals. Thinking about this, Zhao Lijai turned to her fiancé and asked, "Brother Yan, can we visit Zhen's lake on the way?" Hearing this, Jin Zuyan asked, "Aitg, do you want to catch some fish?" Zhao Lijai nodded and replied, "We can dig a pond or just raise the fish in the irrigation canals inside my space. This way, we will have fish to eat in the future." When he thought about their future children, Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Okay, we should catch more so they can breed faster." His Aitg would need to nourish her body if they were preparing to have a child in a few years. "No problem," she agreed readily. While the 2 of them were making plans, Gu Shao's and Rong Mo had already driven past the border between Linan and Yunqian City. Unlike the Phantom team, they didn't stop to rest. Along the way, they only stopped at gas stations to refuel and gather more supplies. The SUV was fitted with a roof rack that could carry a lot of items. Whenever they spotted a mini-market at a gas station, they would check it out. Besides killing the scattered zombies, they headed straight to the warehouse instead of taking supplies from the shelves. Though this delayed their trip, it ensured they wouldn't run out of supplies. If they were able to find Rong Mo's family, they would need even more. The 2 of them drove until they reached the outskirts of Yunqian City. Then Gu Shao said, "Mo, let's find a place to spend the night." "Okay." After driving for another hour, they finally saw several buildings along the roadside. The area wasn't as densely populated as the city center, so there were fewer zombies. "Shao's, there's a small house on the left side. Let's stay there," Rong Mo suggested. Gu Shao's nodded and drove the car toward the house. After parking, the 2 of them took the backpacks prepared by Zhao Lijai and packed in extra supplies before stepping out. Since they didn't have a space-type ability, they parked the car near the entrance so they could keep an eye on it. Holding onto their blades, Gu Shao said, "Mo, stay behind me." Now that he was at level 1, his combat power was no less than Rong Mo's. Combined with his mixed combat skills, his reaction was faster than her. He nodded at his girlfriend before opening the door. The moment he did, an arrow shot toward him at high speed. Feeling the danger, he instinctively raised his blade. Clang, crack. The arrow was deflected by the blade and embedded itself deeply in the wall. From the shadows, a man stepped out and said coldly, "This place is taken. Leave." Hearing the familiar voice, Rongmo was stunned. She stepped forward, and before Gu Shao's could stop her, she asked, "Cousin?" The man froze upon seeing her and asked in disbelief, "Mo, is that you?" The moment she heard this, Rongmo rushed forward and hugged him. Chapter 305, The Only Family. Seeing what was happening, Gu Shao's was momentarily stunned. Though he heard her call the man her cousin, it still made him uncomfortable to see his girlfriend hugging another man. Unaware of her boyfriend's jealousy, Rongmo held her cousin for a moment before letting go and asking, "Cousin, why are you here? Have you seen my parents? What about the others?" Hearing her questions, Rong Kinyu fell silent for a long moment before replying hoarsely, "Mo, your parents, they turned into zombies." "Cousin, what do you mean by that?" Rongmo was shocked. Lowering his head, Rong Kinyu said softly, "I had a high fever when I visited our grandparents. When I woke up a few days later, everyone had been killed." He didn't need to tell her the details, as Rongmo understood. If her parents had turned into zombies, it was very likely that the rest of her family had been killed by them. All this time, her family had been her anchor, her reason to stay alive even during the most humiliating moments of her life. And now she was told they were gone. How could she possibly accept such a truth? The next moment, her eyes rolled back and she collapsed. Mo, Gu Shao's and Rong Kinyu shouted at the same time. Before Rong Kinyu could catch her, Gu Shao's had already taken her into his arms. He gently patted her cheeks and called out, "Mo, wake up, Mo." Standing nearby, Rong Kinyu watched him closely. He saw the worry and anxiety in Gu Shao's eyes. It seemed his concern for Mo was genuine. After Gu Shao's pressed on her acupuncture point, Rongmo finally woke up and slowly opened her eyes. The moment she saw her boyfriend's reddened eyes filled with worry, she burst into tears and hugged him. Fearing she might become too agitated and faint again, Gu Shao's could only hold her gently, patting her back while whispering, "Mo, I'm here. I won't go anywhere. I will always be with you." 15 minutes later, Rongmo finally calmed down. Though she was still sobbing, she was no longer as devastated as before. She had been facing the apocalypse for almost a month, had even endured torture and humiliation, yet she had survived. Her mind was no longer as fragile as it was before the world turned into a living hell. Now that she had accepted the fact that her family was gone, she could think more rationally. Raising her head, she looked at her cousin and asked hoarsely, "Cousin, do you have any plans next?" Rong Kinyu had been struggling to survive alone. Now that he had reunited with family, he didn't want to part again. He shook his head and said, "My plan was to look for you. Now that I have found you, I will go wherever you go. You are my only family now." Hearing this, Gu Shao said, "Brother, since that's the case, let's rest here for today and head back to the base with us. Moore and I joined a mercenary team, and we don't have to worry about supplies or a place to stay. If you come with us, you will have better living conditions." Rong Kinyu studied him and asked, "Who are you?" Realizing she hadn't introduced them, Rong Mo said, "Cousin, this is my boyfriend, Gu Shao's. He is my senior from university." Raising his eyebrows at this information, Rong Kinyu nodded but didn't comment further. As the sun began to set over the western horizon, Gu Shao said, "Mo, I will go get some food for your brother." "Okay." While he went to the car, Rong Kinyu finally had time to check on his cousin. He looked her up and down before saying, "Mo, I don't know what you have been through these past few weeks, but now that your brother is here, I will protect you. Don't trust others too easily, even if that person is your lover." When she heard this, Rong Mo recalled that her cousin had a girlfriend, yet he hadn't mentioned her. Did something happen between them? Though she was curious, since her cousin didn't want to bring her up, she decided not to ask. Nodding at his words, she replied, "Cousin, I understand." Not long after, Gu Shao's returned with a bag of food. After locking the door and blocking it with some tables and chairs, he checked all the windows. Only after making sure everything was secure did he walk over to them. The three of them sat on chairs around a table. Gu Shao's took out an empty bottle from the bag, and before filling it with water, he said, "Brother, I'm a water-type ability user. If you need water in the future, just let me know." Rong Kinyu nodded and said, "I'm a metal-type ability user. How much water can you produce each time?" "Right now, I'm at level 1, so I can create around 1,000 liters before my energy is drained. To recover, I need 7 hours of rest or 5 transparent crystal cores," Gu Shao's explained. Hearing this, Rong Mo was taken aback. She hadn't expected her boyfriend to share such detailed information about his ability with her cousin. He was usually cautious around strangers and often pretended to be weaker than he actually was. For him to be so honest showed that he truly regarded her cousin as family. While she was moved by his trust, Rong Kinyu was stunned by the strength of Gu Xiao's ability. In the past few weeks he had encountered many people, including several ability users. Most had basic abilities, and among them, only 3 possessed elemental abilities. Of those, only 1 was a water type. Compared to that person, who could barely produce 800 milliliters of water before exhausting his energy, Gu Xiao's ability was 100 times stronger. Noticing that he had fallen into deep thought, Rong Mo said, "Cousin, my ability is fire type, but I haven't broken through to level 1 yet." Her words snapped Rong Kinyu out of his daze. He nodded but didn't say anything. Seeing that he wasn't in the mood to talk, they didn't disturb him and handed him the bag of food. Chapter 306, Pingjiang City. While Gu Xiao's and his team ate and rested, the Phantom team members entered Pingjiang City. As a third-tier city, Pingjiang City had a total of 6 county-level divisions, further divided into 50 towns, 10 townships, and 6 sub-districts. At this moment, they were entering one of the counties with an area of 980 square kilometers, but with a population of more than 850,000 people. With the high population in this county, they could expect that at least there were more than 600,000 zombies in this county. Checking his watch, Jin Zuyan took his walkie-talkie and said, "Old Chin, check the area and find a place for us to stay the night." "Understood," Chin Luzi replied. He checked the map in his mind for a moment before he said, "Captain, there is a village in the area, 400 meters to the east." "Everyone, we will go check that area first," Jin Zuyan said as he changed the route. Following behind him, the Phantom team members replied, "Understood." They drove for almost half an hour before they saw the road sign on the roadside. The population of this village was more than 6,000 people, and it was located near Zhen's lake. After reading the road sign, Zhao Lijai said, "Brother Yan, can we visit the lake tomorrow?" "Okay," Jin Zuyan agreed readily. They drove for another hour before they finally saw the entrance of the village. When they arrived, they parked the armored cars and came out one after another. After Zhao Lijai stored the armored cars into her space, Jin Zuyan turned to his team and said, "Everyone, be careful." With the sun set and the red moon hung in the sky, the zombies would be stronger than during the daytime. The team members pulled out their air guns and formed a formation as they walked into the village. Positioned in the center of the formation, Chin Luzi said, "Captain, there is a group of zombies in the front and several scattered zombies inside the houses." Hearing his warning, the members' eyes lit up. They had been sitting inside the cars for so many hours and already felt bored. Now that they finally had the chance to relax their muscles, they were eager to act. After walking for 5 minutes, they heard the roars of zombies. Unlike usual when they waited for the zombies, Jin Zuyan said, "Clear the area as soon as possible." "Understood," the members replied in unison. As they received their orders, they rushed toward the direction where they heard the zombies' roars. Seeing the red dots in his mind getting closer, Chin Luzi bent his knees and leaped into the air. With a wave of his hand, a tornado appeared out of thin air and flew toward the zombies at a fast speed. Zra! Wash tilde boom! With the tornado hitting the zombies, more than 20 zombies were sucked into the tornado, while the rest were sent flying. The moment the Phantom team members saw the zombies flying in the air, they aimed their air guns and started shooting. Top. Due to the red moon, they needed several shots before they were able to kill the zombies. Some of the zombies that were still alive when they fell to the ground were whipped by 2 vines. Crack. Zhou Huajian's ability to control his vines had improved by leaps and bounds after the last battle against the zombie horde at Linen City's border. Now, with every movement of his hand, the vines moved with precision and speed. As the vines whipped at the zombies' necks, they severed them instantly. Black blood and rotten flesh scattered on the ground as the rancid stench thickened in the air. Unwilling to be outdone, Gao Bohai created 3 wind blades and combined them into one, making it similar to a blade used in a meat blender. As the wind blades spun faster and faster in his palm, he threw them toward the zombies. Crash. Using his energy to control the wind blades, he turned the zombies into meat paste, as he couldn't fully control his skill perfectly yet. Seeing this, Chen Qianfeng frowned and said, "Brother Bohai, your skill is too disgusting." "Sorry, I'm still practicing," Gao Bohai replied apologetically. As they killed the zombies, they continued to walk forward. Noticing the gore on the ground, Shen Jinj couldn't help but say, "Brother Qianfeng, can you do something about those things?" Knowing that this guy had mild OCD, Chen Qianfeng said, "I will wash them away." With this, he raised his hands and created a water shield in a half-circle shape at the front of the entire team. While the water shield was not as strong as Zhao Lijai's water shield, it was more than enough to block a level 1 or level 2 zombie's attack, let alone push away the black blood and rotten meat paste on the ground. His water shield made cleaning up easier as it was similar to a bulldozer. 2 hours later, they finally cleared up all of the wandering zombies in a 500-meter radius. When they were done, Jin Zuyin said, "Clear the zombies in the surrounding houses first before we call it a day." "Yes, Captain." It took them another half an hour to clear out all the zombies in the houses. After they gathered all the zombies' corpses in the open field near the village entrance, Jin Zuyin used his black flame to burn everything into ashes, leaving the crystal cores behind. Zhao Lijai waved her hand and stored all the crystals into her space. She no longer bothered to wash the crystals, as her space would turn everything with the zombie virus into energy and absorb it. From afar, the villagers, who were hiding in the underground cellars, couldn't see anything, but they could hear the zombies' roars and the sounds of fighting outside through the small windows they used as ventilation. Inside the cellars, an old woman turned to her son and asked, "Dalang, do you think that the government will finally send soldiers to rescue us?" Chapter 307, Exchange 1. Hearing his mother's words, the middle-aged man shook his head and said, "Mother, we shouldn't put our hope in the government anymore. It has been almost a month, yet no one ever came to save us. Those people who came before only came to plunder our house. If not for us hiding in this cellar, we might have been killed a long time ago." The old woman's eyes dimmed at her eldest son's words and said, "Dalang, our food is only enough for another month. Mother is old now. You should bring your family and leave this place. Find a safe place and continue living." When he heard his mother's words, the man's eyes reddened. He shook his head and said, "Mother, what nonsense are you saying? My brothers and father are no longer around. You only have me left now. If I leave you behind, what would you do?" After he said this, a woman walked over to hold the old woman's hand and said, "Mother, we are family. We won't abandon you. Even if we have to leave our home, we will go together." "Grandma, we don't want to be separated from you," the children also chimed in. Seeing that her family was filial to her was enough for the old woman. She patted her daughter-in-law's hand and said, "Dalang's wife, I have lived long enough and have no regrets. I'm old and can't run. I will only become your burden if I go with you, so listen to me and leave tomorrow." Just after she said this, they heard a sound coming from outside. Brother Bohai, did you hear someone talking just now?" The moment they heard this, the old woman and her family no longer dared to speak. Outside, the Phantom team members were checking the perimeter to make sure that there were no zombies. While they were patrolling, they heard faint voices coming from this direction and came to check the situation. Before Gao Bohai could respond, Qin Luzi walked over and said, "There are a total of 5 people in this area. Since they are not inside the house, then they might be hiding inside the underground cellar." "Brother Luzi, how did you know?" Zyro Kai asked curiously. "Houses in the village mostly have underground cellars to store grains and other dried food. My grandparents' house also has one, so I know about it," Qin Luzi replied casually. With him pointing out the direction, Gao Bohai found the entrance to the underground cellar easily. As he pulled the door open, the red moonlight illuminated the cellar. The family hiding inside had already moved to the corner, trying to avoid them by hiding behind the sacks. But with Qin Luzi around, even an ability user with an invincible skill couldn't hide away from him, let alone ordinary people. He pointed at the corner and said, "They are behind the sacks." As his words fell, the middle-aged man gritted his teeth and came out from his hiding. He stood in front of his family and said, "Comrade, if you come to take the supplies, you can take them. But please, spare my family's lives." The moment Zyro Kai and Gao Bohai saw the man, they noticed that while he was unkempt, he didn't look as thin as the survivors they had met previously. After a moment of silence, Gao Bohai said, "Comrade, we didn't come to take away your supplies. We already cleared the zombies outside and were checking if there were some wandering zombies left." When the man heard this, he was taken aback and asked, "You didn't come to get the supplies?" Xirokai shook his head and replied, "Comrade, we are not bandits. We can find supplies in the city, so why should we take yours? What's more, we have enough supplies and don't lack this small amount." After he said this, the man's eyes lit up and he asked, "Comrade, are you the soldiers sent by the government to save us?" This time it was Chin Luzi who replied, "We are a mercenary team, and we didn't take any mission to save anyone." After he said this, he paused for a moment and added, "Also, there is no longer a government. You should stop your wishful thinking, as no one will come to save you. If you want to survive, you have to go out and fight for your own survival." The next moment, an old woman came out from behind the sacks and asked, "Young man, what do you mean by that?" Seeing the elderly woman, Xirokai said, "Granny, the laws have crumbled, and the government is no longer operating as before. Now the strong rule and the weak are bullied." Hearing this, the old woman held onto her son's arm and asked, "Dalang, what should we do now?" Noticing her tears, Galbohai thought about his own grandmother and said, "Granny, your family still has supplies. If you leave this place and go to Linen City, you might be able to join the survivor base there. The name of the base leader is Zun Chi, and you can make a living there. From the border of Linen City, you need to drive around 6 to 7 hours in the direction of Linen University. You must avoid the city center and take the suburban road." The middle-aged man finally saw hope and asked, "Comrade, can you tell me more about this base?" "Comrade, in this base, even ordinary people can find work and earn points. Using the points, you can exchange them for food, medicine, and even rent a house. If you have a specific skill, you can work for the base and receive a higher monthly salary," Xirokai explained. "Comrade, how about the situation there? Is that place safe?" the old woman asked. This time Xirokai nodded and replied, "Granny, from all the places I have visited before, the base led by Captain Zun has the best security. When we left, they were building a wall and sending people to clear the zombies around the base. You can live there with ease." The man and his family were tempted by their words, but when they saw the grains and food in the cellar, they hesitated. Chapter 308, Exchange 2. Noticing the man and his family's hesitation, Galbohai thought for a moment before he said, "Comrade, how about you come with us and meet our captain first? He might have a solution for your family's situation." When he heard this, the middle-aged man looked at his wife and saw her shaking her head. While he knew that it was risky to follow these people, they had no other option now. If they stayed here, they would die. If they left, at least they had a chance to survive. He held his wife's hand and said, "Wife, wait for me here. I will come back." As if he was going on a suicide mission, the man turned to the Phantom team and said, "Comrade, I will go with you." Seeing his expression, the members exchanged glances and climbed out of the underground cellar, followed by the man. After they came out, the middle-aged man's wife closed the door and locked it. Even though the lock had been broken by the Phantom team member, she could use a piece of iron to lock the door. When the middle-aged man stood outside, he raised his head and saw the red moon. Unlike before, there were no zombie roars. He stood there, enveloped in eerie silence. Besides their breaths, there were no other sounds in the area. "Let's go," Chin Luzi said. With his words, they walked back to the entrance of the village. The middle-aged man looked around and let out a sigh when he saw that his village had turned into a desolate, dead place. The previous joyous and lively atmosphere was no longer seen. They walked for 15 minutes before arriving at a 2-story house near the entrance. When the middle-aged man saw this house, pain flashed in his eyes. This house had belonged to his second brother before the family turned into monsters. Now, seeing a group of strangers living in the house made him feel unhappy but helpless. As they entered the house, Jin Zuyan raised his eyebrows when he saw the middle-aged man but said nothing. He trusted his team members' judgment. After they took their seats, Chin Luzi said, "Captain, we found this man and his family inside an underground cellar of one of the houses. We brought him over to see if you have any solution to help his family." Hearing this, Zhao Lijai's interest was piqued, and she asked, "Brother Luzi, what is his family's situation?" Before answering her question, Chin Luzi glanced at the man and replied, "This man is an ability user, but he might not have realized it himself." As he heard these words, the middle-aged man was surprised. He indeed didn't feel anything different about himself. As for this so-called ability user, he had heard about the term when a previous group came and plundered their village. After a moment of pause, Chin Luzi continued, "As for his family, there is an old woman, a middle-aged woman and 3 more people, but we didn't see them. Judging from the situation, he might be the only man left in the family. Their family has some supplies in the underground cellar. Judging from the number of people and the amount of supplies, it won't be a problem for them to survive for another month. Since that's the case, what does he need from us? Zhao Lijai asked curiously. This time it was Zyro Kai who explained, Sister-in-law, we told them about Captain Zun's base, and they seemed interested in moving there. But with those grains, it might be hard for them to move everything. The moment she heard this, Zhao Lijai understood the middle-aged man's predicament. She glanced at her fiancé and asked, Brother Yan, what do you think about this matter? Jin Zuyan met her gaze and noticed that she already had an idea in mind. So he replied, Aitg, you can handle this matter. Since the captain already let her make the decision, Zhao Lijai no longer hesitated and said, Comrade, there is indeed a way to solve your problem. The middle-aged man's eyes flickered as he asked, Comrade, what way? At this moment, your problem is how to transport your supplies. If you bring so many, it might not be a good thing as it could even invite trouble to your family, Zhao Lijai said. The man nodded and said, That's indeed my concern. Then, how about you exchange your grains for dry food and crystal cores? With crystal cores, you can exchange them for food when you arrive at the base. Dry food makes it easier for you to transport them, Zhao Lijai suggested. The man hesitated for a long time before he asked, What type of dry food? Also, how much food and how many crystals can we exchange? Rubbing her chin, Zhao Lijai said, We need to check your grains first before we can decide. Hearing this, the man went silent for a moment before he nodded and said, You can come with me to check the grains first. Okay, Zhao Lijai said as she stood up. Seeing his fiancée was going, Jin Zuyan also stood up and went with her. While the members were curious, they didn't follow and instead prepared dinner. Cooking for so many people was not easy, so they had to do it together. They walked for a while before returning to the underground cellar. When the man knocked on the door, he said, Wife, it's me. Hearing that her husband had returned, the middle-aged woman quickly opened the door and said, Husband, you are back. Just after she finished her words, she finally saw the group following her husband. She stared at them warily before asking, Husband, who are they? These are the people who came to exchange food with us, the man answered. After she heard this, she nodded and went to find her children and mother-in-law. Not long after, they climbed out of the underground cellar. Due to hiding inside without being exposed to sunlight for almost a month, their complexions were sickly pale. Chapter 309, Exchange 3. When Zhao Lijai saw the children, she felt pity for them, but she had no intention of helping them for free. 5 minutes later, she entered the cellar and checked the grains. Besides rice, there were potatoes, corn, sweet potatoes, and some dried vegetables. While the quality of these grains was far worse compared to those grown in her space, it was far better than the food she had eaten in her previous life. After a while, Jin Zuyan asked, Aitg, how is it? Zhao Lijai looked at her fiancé and nodded. Then she turned to the middle-aged man and said, I can give you 200 crystal cores, 5 boxes of instant noodles, 10 boxes of biscuits, 5 bottles of medicine, 20 packs of sanitary pads, and 50 gallons of water. When the middle-aged man heard this, he frowned and said, Comrade, the total amount of my grains is at least 2,500 kilograms. How can it be exchanged for so few supplies? Hearing his questioning tone, Zhao Lijai didn't get offended and explained, Comrade, you might not know the situation outside. Crystal cores are hard to come by. Even after killing 50 zombies, you might not get 1 or 2 crystals. What's more, medicine is very rare and expensive now. It's not like before when you could buy a bottle of medicine for several yuan. Now, you can exchange a pill of fever medicine for several packs of biscuits. After a moment of pause, she added, 1 box of instant noodles has 40 packs, that's 200 packs. A box of biscuits has 30 packs, totaling 300 packs of biscuits, with each pack having 20 biscuits. A bottle of medicine has 100 pills, that's 500 pills total. As for sanitary pads, they are easier to find, as not many people need them now, so I didn't give you too many. How about the water? 50 gallons won't be enough for my family, the man said. As a water-type ability user, Zhao Lijai could feel the energy emitting from the middle-aged man, which was similar to hers. She pointed at the man's fingers and said, As a water-type ability user, you don't need too much water. As long as you create water every time you recover your energy, your family won't lack water. When they heard this, everyone turned to the middle-aged man with surprise. The man frowned and asked, Comrade, how can you be so sure I have water-type ability? Opening her palm, Zhao Lijai smiled and replied, because I can recognize the similar energy coming from you." When the man saw a ball of water floating on her palm, he clenched his fists. "Besides that, you keep wiping your hands on your clothes. I can see that you are not used to your ability yet, so your palms are constantly covered with water," Zhao Lijai said as she pointed at the wet ground. The man looked at her and asked, "Can you tell me how to control the energy?" "Focus your mind and try to feel the energy inside your body. Use your mind to control it and focus it on your fingertips. When you have enough energy, you can try to compress the water ball to increase its hardness," she explained. Crack! As soon as she finished her words, she pointed her finger toward the wall, and the next moment, a water ball the size of a red bean shot toward it, leaving a deep hole in the wall. Zhao Lijai flicked her fingers. The water ball flew back to her before stopping in front of the man and floating midair. Seeing this, the man was shocked. He looked at the water ball in surprise and delight. He clenched his fists as he finally found a way to protect his family. After realizing the power of a water-type ability, he no longer felt as helpless as before. After a while, the man calmed down and said, "I will exchange the grains with you." "Good," Zhao Lijai nodded, and with a wave of her hand, she collected everything into her space. The man and his family were stunned by this scene. Before they could ask, she took out the supplies they had agreed on from her space. Besides the supplies, she also gave them several blades made by the Wen brothers. They often made blades from extra metal after their fights against zombies, which were stored in her space. After they finished the exchange, the Phantom team members left the underground cellar and returned to the two-story house. While the Phantom team was having dinner, the villagers who were hiding in the underground cellars saw Dalang and his family talking to the strangers. Even though they were curious, no one was foolish enough to come out at night and be exposed to danger. Under this situation, the night passed peacefully. Early the next morning, the Phantom team had already finished their breakfast before sunrise. At 7 o'clock, Qin Luzi suddenly said, "Captain, there is a group of people heading in our direction." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Don't bother with them. Pack up and prepare to leave." Understood. With his order, the members no longer thought about the survivors and focused on packing their belongings. When they came out of the house, the villagers had already arrived. Seeing them, one of the villagers took a step forward and said, "Comrade, I heard that Dalang's family exchanged their food with you. Can we exchange our food too?" Hearing this, Zhao Lijai asked, "Did they tell you?" After hesitating for a moment, the villager shook his head and replied, "Actually, we saw you yesterday." Zhao Lijai observed them and noticed that most of them were men, with several women and children. There were only 5 elderly people in total. She thought for a moment before she asked, "After exchanging your food, do you plan to leave?" The villagers nodded and a woman said, "Brother Dalang's wife told us about the base in Linen. We also want to go there and try our luck. It's better than staying here and waiting for death." Chapter 310, Golden Pouch. Thinking about the base needing more people to help, Zhao Lijai nodded and said, "There is indeed a base that accepts everyone, but there are rules in the base. If you go there, you have to follow the rules, or you will face punishment." Some of the villagers hesitated when they heard this. Zhao Lijai observed them and noted them down. After a while, the villagers still decided to go, so an old man said, "Comrade, we still want to go. Can we exchange our grains with your food?" Since they had said so, Zhao Lijai didn't mind bartering the supplies. After all, having more grains was good. She nodded and said, "We have to check your grains first before we decide to exchange or not." "That's a matter of course," the old man nodded and agreed with her. "Show the way," she said. With his fiancée already deciding to do this business, Jin Zuyan looked at his team and said, "Everyone, wait here. We will leave when we finish the barter." Understood. The team members replied in unison. While Jin Zuyan went with Zhao Lijai, the rest of the members waited at the entrance. Leaning on the car's door, Li Kixuan glanced at Mo Junji and asked, "Brother, you look sick. Can you fight?" Mo Junji took out his handkerchief, covered his mouth, and coughed softly a few times before he asked him back with a smile, "Brother, do you think I can fight with my current condition?" Li Kixuan looked at him from head to toe before he said with doubt, "If you can't fight, then why did the captain let you join the team? Every member of the team is strong and very skilled. You are not only sick but also so weak. With you in the team, we might have to protect you instead." After he said this, Mo Junji lowered his eyelids to hide his annoyance. He hated it the most when people commented about him looking weak. He never asked to be born with this pretty boy face, and he was not born weak. Despite his lean body, he still had decent muscles and was not as weak as people thought. Seeing that he said nothing, Lee Kixuan smiled and added, "Brother, if you are afraid, you can hide behind me when we fight against zombies. With my power, it's more than enough to protect a pretty boy like you." The moment he heard his words, Mo Junji's eyes turned cold, but his expression remained calm with a smile on his lips. He nodded and said meaningfully, "Then, I won't be polite with you." While they were chatting, a black mist seeped out from his finger and moved toward Lee Kixuan. The moment the black mist touched his clothes, it made a soft sizzling sound as the fabric burned and turned into liquid. With his head lowered, Mo Junji glanced at Lee Kixuan's clothes and was stunned by what he saw. Under the outer layer, there was a thin layer of fabric made using nanotechnology. As someone who had done deep research regarding nanotech, he knew very well that this kind of fabric was the latest product of experimental development. Besides him and his team, there was only one person who possessed this kind of fabric, the biggest investor in the research. As this thought flashed in his mind, he took a closer look at the man beside him and let out a chuckle. Who would have thought that the chairman of the global group was a young man in his 20s? Now that he had finally figured it out, everything made sense. Only someone young with lots of money would be bold enough to spend billions of dollars to fund research that had no results for years. After learning about his hidden identity, Mo Junji felt that he could forgive him for his offensive words earlier. No matter what, he was once his big golden pouch. Taking that into account, he wouldn't bother with his foul mouth. While the members were waiting patiently, Zhao Lijai had already checked the grains owned by the villagers. To be fair, most of them had similar grain quality, but some only had a little left. An hour later, she finished exchanging the supplies with the villagers. Some had more and some had less, but each family was given a blade for self-defense. Before leaving, she looked at the villagers and said, "Although the zombies at the border have been cleared out, it's better for all of you to travel together. With more people, you can help each other and have a higher chance of survival when fighting against zombies. But a large number of people also has its disadvantages, as it would be easier to attract zombies. So think it over and decide. I wish you good luck," she added. After she said this, Zhao Lijai turned to her fiancé and said, "Brother Yan, let's go." The villagers were still discussing their plans to leave when the Phantom team had already left the compound and driven toward the town center. Along the way, they would stop to clear the surrounding zombies. Besides that, they also cleared the abandoned cars and repaired the road. If there was a hole in the road, Zhang Yuan would use his Earth-type ability to fill it, then the Wen brothers would cover it with a layer of metal. They made sure to add a pattern to the metal so that cars driving over it wouldn't slip. Due to this, it took them 5 hours to reach the town center. Unlike the city center, the town center had a smaller population. Using the walkie-talkie, Jin Zuyan said, "Old Chin, how's the situation?" Chin Luzi, who always paid attention to the map in his mind, replied, "Captain, the number of zombies in this area is around 15,000 to 18,000. Most of them are concentrated in the area 300 meters to the right." Since everyone had already eaten their lunch while traveling, they didn't need to find a place to rest. Jin Zuyan checked the map and said, "We will clear the zombies, then go to the hospital." Chapter 311, Little Sunflower 1. Sitting in the car behind, Mo Junji heard this and used the walkie-talkie to ask, "Captain, there is a research laboratory near the hospital. Can we go there later?" "Do you need anything there?" Jin Zuyan asked. "Captain, I want to get some tools and collect the data. Perhaps that data will be useful in the future," Mo Junji replied. After considering the pros and cons, Jin Zuyan agreed. "Okay, we will go to the lab first before we go to the hospital." They drove for another 5 minutes before they parked the cars. After everyone came out of the armored vehicles, Zhao Lijai stored the cars into her space. Everyone pulled out their weapons and went into formation. As they walked toward the town center, Zhang Yuan walked to Jin Zuyan and said, "Captain, if I remember correctly, there is a hidden military base in this area. It should be located near Zhen's Lake." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan recalled the information in his previous life and nodded. In his previous life, this hidden military base was discovered by a group of ability users in the second year of the apocalypse. Not long after they found the military base, they used the weapons and military equipment and used those to clear the zombies in Pingjiang City. When the base was built and the power solidified, they started to reclaim the surrounding areas and merged the survivor camps into their own. In the 8th year of the apocalypse, this base became one of the strongest bases in the country. After making up his mind, he said, "Let's clear this area before dark." "Understood," everyone replied in unison. To speed up, they combined their abilities and used air guns. With the colorful attacks flashing in the area, Yin Yusheng could only use his blade and airgun to kill the zombies. It's not that he didn't want to use his ability, but his ability couldn't be used for battle. Unlike Zhou Huajian, who could create vines, his ability could only speed up the crop's growth. Besides that, he couldn't create anything else. While he was feeling disappointed inside, he didn't say it out loud.
Pop, pop, pop. Crack, crack, crack.
As he killed the zombies, the little green energy hiding in his brain followed his wood-type energy inside his body and flowed along his veins. When it reached his fingertips, it seeped out of his body to see what the situation outside was. The next moment, a small sunflower the size of a thumbnail popped out at the tip of Yin Yusheng's pinky finger.
Zra! Crack!
The little sunflower was startled when it saw a big rotten mouth coming at it, but before it could hide, its master had already beheaded the zombie using his blade. Seeing this, the little sunflower was so happy that its master not only kindly let it stay in his body, he also protected it when it came out to play. Due to its joy, the little sunflower made a little dance. As it swayed and swayed, it brushed Yin Yusheng's ring finger. Startled by the sudden tickling sensation on his finger, he raised his hand and saw the little sunflower dancing. He was so shocked by what he saw that he couldn't react for a moment. He looked at the sunflower growing on his finger with wide eyes when he heard Gao Bohai say, "Sister Jiang, Brother Chen is hurt." Turning around, he saw Chen Ji's arm was bitten by the zombie. The moment Jiang Lixin saw that her husband was injured, she quickly rushed over to him and healed his arm. While she was healing his injury, Gao Bohai used the water given by Zhao Lijai to clean the wound and gave some for him to drink. Yin Yusheng had a good relationship with Chen Ji as they often chatted during breaks. Seeing that he was injured badly, he went over and asked, "Sister Jiang, how is Brother Chen?" Jiang Lixin was anxious and shook her head. At this moment, she couldn't afford to be distracted. Her husband's arm was badly injured as a chunk of flesh was bitten off. They could even see the bones, and the area around the wound started to fester and emitted a rancid smell. While they were healing Chen Ji, Jin Zuyan swung his blade and chopped off the zombie's head. As the head rolled on the ground, he said, "It's a level 2 zombie." With Chen Ji's current level, he wouldn't be able to withstand the zombie virus from a level 2 zombie. As soon as he said this, the members' expressions changed. Jiang Lixin refused to give up and continued healing her husband, even though she was running out of energy. When she felt the headache, she grabbed a handful of crystals and absorbed them without stopping the healing process. Seeing the situation, Li Sikai raised his hand, and the next moment, several lightning nets appeared above them.
Crack, crack, crack.
As the nets merged and expanded, they turned into a dome-shaped barrier surrounding them. Every time the zombies rushed over, they would be roasted by the lightning barrier. While it couldn't turn them into ashes like Jin Zuyan's black flame, it was enough to keep them out. With the barrier, the rest of the members continued killing the zombies, while Jin Zuyan and Zhao Lijai came over to check the situation. Jin Zuyan squatted beside Chen Ji and checked his wound. When he saw the mutation signs, he said, "If we want to save his life, we can only cut off his arm." The moment he said this, Chen Ji was stunned. He was a doctor and a researcher. Without an arm, he would no longer be able to do any surgery. Cutting off his arm was equal to asking for his life. He shook his head and said, "Captain, I don't want to lose my arm. I'm a doctor." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan looked at him and said, "If you keep this arm, you will turn into a zombie. By then, what is the use of having this arm?"
But I...
Chapter 312, Little Sunflower 2. Before Chen Ji could say another word, the little sunflower on Yin Yusheng's pinky finger suddenly puffed up its cheeks. As its cheeks became bigger, Yin Yusheng felt the wood-type energy in his body rush toward his fingertips. Noticing this, he looked at the sunflower and saw it bloated like a balloon. Before he could check what was going on, the little sunflower suddenly opened its mouth and spat out green liquid. Due to its small size, no one noticed it until they saw green liquid spray out from Yin Yusheng's fingertips and cover Chen Ji's wound. Yusheng, this, Gao Bohai was shocked. "Brother, I also don't know what happened or what this is," Yin Yusheng said helplessly. He was worried that this sunflower was a parasite living off his body. He was not afraid of death, but he didn't want to die because of a parasite. Therefore, he was worried and anxious. While everyone was stunned, Zhao Lijai was surprised. She had seen the little sunflower go into Zhou Huajian's body before. How could it end up in Yin Yusheng's body now? Under everyone's gaze, the sunflower continued spitting out the green liquid. At first, everyone thought that it was poison due to the dark green color, but after the liquid covered Chen Ji's wound, they noticed that the mutation process seemed to slow down. After spitting out the green liquid 3 times, the little sunflower lowered its head as if it were going to wilt the next second. When Yin Yusheng saw this, he reached out and poked at the little sunflower, checking if it was dead or still alive. Feeling its master's soft touch, the little sunflower wrapped its leaves around his forefinger and rubbed its head a few times before it turned into green energy and returned to his body. Seeing this, Yin Yusheng was stunned for a moment before he quickly checked his body using his energy. When he finally found the familiar yet unfamiliar energy in his brain, he heaved a sigh of relief. From what he saw just now, this sunflower was not a parasite. It might be his ability. Reaching this conclusion, he no longer felt worried and asked, "Brother Bohai, how is Brother Chen now?" Gao Bohai checked the wound and said, "While the wound still needs time to recover, the mutation sign has stopped, but we still have to cut off the rotten flesh and treat the wound." When everyone heard this, they let out a sigh of relief and turned to Yin Yusheng. "Yusheng, what's going on?" Jin Zuyan asked. "Captain, I'm not sure either, but I can feel that the sunflower just now was part of my ability. Maybe besides inducing growth to crops, I can control plants too," Yin Yusheng replied while shaking his head. After he said this, Jiang Lixin said, "Brother Yin, your ability is really amazing. My healing cannot stop the mutation process, but your ability can. It seems that the green liquid produced by your sunflower could remove the zombie virus." As soon as she said this, Mo Junji's eyes lit up. He reached out to hold Yin Yusheng's arm and said, "Brother, give me some of your body's liquid. I want to check the component." When Yin Yusheng heard his words, he shivered and replied, "Brother, please watch your words. If people didn't know the truth, they might think something happened between us. I still want to find a wife, don't ruin my reputation." After making sure that Chen Ji was fine, Jin Zuyan said, "Everyone, keep your guard up and don't underestimate the enemies." As he said this, he glanced at the non-soldier members. When they met his gaze, everyone realized that due to their recent power, everyone was often underestimating the zombies. They thought that they were invincible and no longer as wary as before when they fought. Due to this, Chen Ji was injured by a level 2 zombie. If it were before, they would have noticed that there was a level 2 zombie and prepared themselves. Understanding their captain's dissatisfaction toward their behaviors, the members replied in unison, "Understood." With this accident as a lesson, no one dared to lower their guard or think highly of themselves anymore, especially those non-soldier members. After they killed the zombies in the area, Qin Luzi said, "Captain, there are more zombies at the front." Jin Zuyan checked the area and said, "We can't use our ability to the fullest in this limited place. Is there any open area nearby?" Besides the red dots, Qin Luzi could see the map similar to GPS. There were roads, buildings, and also open areas. After a moment he replied, "Captain, there is a field 400 meters in the right direction. It should be a school." Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Everyone, I will lure the zombies to that area. The rest of you should go to that area first." "Understood." After he said this, Jin Zuyan bent his knees and leaped to the nearest building's rooftop. Seeing this, the members ran toward the school direction. As they ran, Zhao Lijai would wave her hand and send several water balls toward the zombies chasing after them. Boom, booms, boom. Unlike other water-type ability users, her water balls would explode upon contact and blast out the zombies' heads. Due to the loud explosion sounds, the zombies in the nearby area were attracted and rushed over. At the same time, Jin Zuyan raised his hand, and several black fireballs flew toward the zombies at high speed. Boom, booms, boom. The black fireballs exploded and killed a group of zombies. He stood on the building's rooftop for a while and waited for the zombies. Zra! When he saw that the zombies were gathering more and more, he leaped off the building and swung his longsword. Wash tilde crash. With one movement, he severed several zombies' heads. Crack! As he landed, he stepped on a rotten head and crushed it under his military boots. Before the zombies could touch him, he dashed toward the school. Chapter 313, The Head Teacher 1. Jin Zuyan controlled his running speed and made sure that the zombies were 3 meters behind him. As he jogged, he raised his head and looked at the window of one of the buildings on the roadside. Inside the building, several people were startled by his gaze and quickly hid behind the curtain. Patting his chest, one of them asked, "Brother, do you think he saw us?" "Impossible, not to mention we didn't have any light. Even with light, he wouldn't be able to see us from that distance," another one replied. Hearing this, the group of people nodded, and one of them said, "Brother, if that person is able to lure away the zombies, should we go out and leave this place?" A middle-aged man shook his head and replied, "Not now. Traveling during nighttime is dangerous. We will leave tomorrow morning."
Okay.
While the group of people were discussing when to leave and what to do next, Zhao Lijai and the Phantom team members had already reached the school area. As Qin Luzi predicted, the open field was a parking lot of the school. There was a gate made of iron, but with how thin the gate was, it was impossible to block the zombies. So after they reached the area, Shen Jinj sent a blue fireball toward the zombies, and Gao Bohai sent a tornado. Boom! As the fireball and tornado merged, the fire tornado swept away the zombies, while at the same time killing a large group of them. Seeing this, Li Kixuan was taken aback. He always thought that when fighting against zombies, he could only depend on himself. Only when he was strong could he have a higher chance of survival. Therefore, when he saw how the members merged their abilities during the battle, he found it incredible. Not only did they have to have great tacit understanding, but they also had to know each other's strengths. Otherwise, it would be impossible to merge their abilities so perfectly like this. While he was analyzing their teamwork, the zombies had been pushed out of the field. The Wen brothers clapped their hands and placed them on the ground. The next moment, a metal wall appeared from the ground, surrounding the school. The metal wall was 3 meters high and 50 centimeters thick. After they blocked the zombies outside, Qin Luzi said, "There are a total of more than 5,000 zombies in this school."
It's raw.
Not long after he said this, they heard a zombie's roar coming from the rooftop. Raising their heads, they saw a zombie standing on top of the clock tower. Zhao Lijai pulled out her dagger and said, "I will handle that zombie. The rest of you will take care of the surrounding zombies."
Okay, Shang Yuan nodded.
The moment she finished her words, she rushed toward the building. When she was near the clock tower, she focused her energy into the dagger. In less than 2 seconds, the dagger was covered with ice. As the ice solidified, it continued to grow and expand.
It's raw.
The zombie leaped from the rooftop and waved its arms. The next moment, 2 ice spears flew toward her at a fast speed. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai swung the dagger. At this moment, the ice covering the dagger had taken the shape of a long scythe with a large blade. The dagger was located in the center of the long handle. As the ice scythe glistened under the sunlight, it made a beautiful arc as it met with the ice spears.
Clang, clang, crack.
While both were ice, the ice scythe was formed from consolidated water and lowered temperatures, which made it harder than the ice spears. The moment the ice spears met with the ice scythe, one of them was blocked and flew toward the ground, while the other was broken in half. As she wielded the ice scythe, Zhao Lijai felt a strange familiarity, as if she was born to use this type of weapon. In fact, this was the first time she used this large scythe, as she was used to using a dagger even in her previous life. Now, holding this weapon made from her ability, she didn't feel any awkwardness at all.
It's raw.
The zombie let out an angry roar as it landed on the ground, leaving a deep crack under its feet. Zhao Lijai looked at the zombie's clothes and noticed the tag on it. Turns out, this zombie was a teacher. The zombie bent its knees slightly and suddenly disappeared from its spot. Noticing this, Zhao Lijai was alarmed and raised her scythe.
Clang.
The zombie's sharp nails were only 3 inches from her eyes. Before she could let out a breath, the zombie swung its left arm, aiming at her head. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai leaned to the left side to dodge the attack, while at the same time using the scythe as a fulcrum, and flipped her body sideways, making a full circle. The moment her feet touched the ground, she swung her scythe vertically from below.
Slash, crash. It's raw.
The blade of the scythe was as thin as a cicada's wing, but sharper than her dagger. With one swift movement, she cut off the zombie's left arm. Black blood splashed on the ground as the rotten arm fell with a thud. Before the zombie could react, Zhao Lijai waved her hand and several water blades flew toward the zombie's neck. Noticing the danger, the zombie leaped back while swinging its arm.
Crack, crack, crack.
Its arm was covered with a thick layer of ice, and the water blades could only destroy the ice shield, failing to injure the zombie. As if knowing that it couldn't win, the zombie turned around and tried to escape. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai said, "Where do you want to run?" With her space as a trump card to escape danger, she was reckless when she was caught up in the heat of battle. Without thinking about the risk, she chased after the zombie. When Zhang Yuan saw this, he shouted, "Sister-in-law, don't chase." Chapter 314, The Head Teacher, 2. Before Zhang Yuan finished his words, Zhao Lijai had already gone into the clock tower building, chasing after the zombie. Seeing this, Qin Luzi said, "Vice Captain, I will follow her." At this moment, the members were fighting against the zombies coming from the school and outside the school. With them being trapped in the middle from two sides, they really couldn't follow Zhao Lijai. So letting Qin Luzi go with her was the best decision at the moment. Zhang Yuan nodded and said, "Keep her safe." Understood. After he said this, he focused his energy on his feet. With his wind-type ability, he could enhance his speed and catch up with his sister-in-law. Meanwhile, Zhao Lijai had been chasing the zombie until they reached the top of the clock tower. When they stood outside the door that led to the clock's engine room, the zombie stopped running and turned to face her. With it standing there blocking the room, Zhao Lijai's eyes flickered with suspicion. By right, zombies wouldn't be able to think like humans unless they were above level 4 or had a special ability. From what she saw, this zombie did have a mutated ice-type ability. But only those zombies with psychic-type abilities were able to regain their memories from their human life when they were under level 4. When her gaze met with the zombies, she noticed panic and anxiety in that pair of black eyes. Seeing this, she didn't move and asked, "What are you hiding?" The zombie lowered its body and took a battle stance as it let out a low, threatening growl, grhhh, roar. Narrowing her eyes, Zhao Lijai gripped her weapon tighter, ready to strike. But before she could attack, she heard faint sobbing voices coming from behind the door. At this moment, Qin Luzi arrived and stood behind her. When he checked his map, he was surprised to find so many survivors in this clock tower. Since this was a school, the survivors inside might be children. When the zombie saw him, it let out a roar, as if warning them to leave.
Raw.
Seeing this, Zhao Lijai thought for a moment before she said, "We won't harm the children. If you want them to survive, you have to let me and my team take them away. They can't stay here."
Raw.
The zombie let out another warning roar. This time, Zhao Lijai was sure that this zombie hadn't regained its memories from its life as a human or developed any intelligence. All its behavior was driven by the strongest instinct it had before turning into a zombie. Most people who turned into zombies would yearn for power or wish that they would survive, which made the zombies emerging from these people have stronger abilities and survival instincts. But this was the first time she met a zombie who was led by its instinct to protect children. When she thought about this, she felt respect for this teacher. Even after his death, he was still thinking about his students and protecting them. "Sister-in-law, we can't keep this zombie," Qin Luzi said. Zhao Lijai nodded, agreeing with him. Even though she felt sympathy and even respect for this teacher, she wouldn't and couldn't leave this level 2 zombie alive. No one knew what the future held, or whether this zombie would continue following its instinct to protect the children. Even if that were the case, one fact remained. This zombie wouldn't prey on the children, but it would continue killing humans, driven by its instinct to kill and eat human flesh. After making up her mind, Zhao Lijai raised her hand, and several ice needles flew toward the zombie. Seeing this, the zombie raised its arm to block the attack.
Stab, stab, stab.
Unlike before, the ice needles didn't injure the zombie, but drilled into the zombie's arm instead. The moment the ice needles entered the zombie's body, a layer of ice suddenly appeared on its arm and spread at a fast speed.
Raw.
The zombie let out a panicked roar as it thrashed around. It even tried to bite off its shoulder to stop the ice from spreading further, but before it could do that, half of its body had already turned into an ice sculpture. When its whole body had turned into ice, Zhao Lijai looked at the zombie's eyes and said, "Thank you for protecting the children, teacher. It's time for you to rest. Farewell."
Crash prank.
As soon as she finished her words, she swung her scythe and beheaded the zombie. As the head rolled on the ground, the zombie's frozen body also broke like a mirror as it fell to the ground. Watching this from the side, Qin Luzi was stunned into silence. He never expected Zhao Lijai to grow so much in such a short period. When she first joined their team, she was already stronger than other ability users. While her power was strong, the most amazing part of her was her imagination. She always found a way to maximize her ability, using less energy to deal heavier damage. This fighting style was so similar to his captain's. After killing the zombie, Zhao Lijai picked up the crystal core, opened the door and walked in. The moment they entered the room, both she and Qin Luzi were stunned by what they saw. Besides the children, there were several adults who were the teachers and school staff. Inside the room, the rancid stench was so thick that it was nauseating. Besides the human corpses, there were several buckets of dirty water. Seeing two strangers entering the room, the adults quickly hid the children behind them and stared at them vigilantly. Noticing this, Zhao Lijai said, "We are a mercenary team and came here to clear out the zombies. You are safe now." After a moment of silence, one of the teachers asked hoarsely, Are you sent by the government?" Zhao Lijai looked at them, flicked her hand, and the ice scythe disappeared. Chapter 315, The Head Teacher, 3. Zhao Lijai sheathed her dagger and replied, "We are just passing by and cleaning up the zombies. There is no longer a government. You should find a way to leave this place. Don't wait for rescue anymore. No one will come to save you." Hearing this, the adults were shocked and at a loss for what to do. They insisted on staying behind, not only because of their responsibility as teachers, but also because they were holding on to the hope that the government would send a rescue team. Now that there was no government anymore, who would come to rescue them? If they left this place alone, they might be able to survive, but what about the children? Without their protection, not to mention finding food or water, they wouldn't even be able to escape when faced with those monsters. Thinking about this, the teachers were unwilling to leave them behind, while the staff were hesitating. They were only ordinary staff and had no sense of responsibility like the teachers. Their first priority would be their own survival, not the children. After they considered the pros and cons, the staff exchanged glances, and one of them asked, "Comrade, what's the situation outside now?" Zhao Lijai could guess their thoughts, but she didn't blame them. After all, good people die the fastest in the apocalypse, and kindness was a luxury. "My team is still fighting the zombies outside, but this building has no zombies. For now, this is the safest place. After we finish killing the zombies, you can leave this place," she replied. After she said that, she paused for a moment before adding, "The scent of blood in this room will attract zombies. You should change location." The moment they heard this, the staff quickly took their bags and left without looking back. Due to a lack of food and water, they were weak and walked with unsteady steps. Seeing this, the teachers looked at each other before one of them said, "We should move the children to another place." Hearing this, the rest of the teachers nodded and whispered something to the children. There were a total of almost 50 children, aged 7 to 11. As the school was a boarding school, the children and teachers were staying at the dormitory when the apocalypse arrived. Out of hundreds of survivors, only they survived after the first rain. No one knows if it was a blessing in disguise or not, as the zombie killed by Zhao Lijai was the head teacher, and he turned into a zombie after drinking the rainwater. With him guarding the building, no zombies could attack them, but they couldn't leave the room either. Every few days, the head teacher would bring a fresh human corpse for them to eat. But as humans, how could they eat their own kind? Therefore, they could only sneak out to find some food when the zombie went out to hunt humans. As for water, they could only consume the water stored in the water tank. Even if they might get sick after drinking the water without boiling it, it was better than dying from dehydration. After almost a month, they never expected to be able to make it this far. Now, they could only live day by day as if it were their last. Zhao Lijai and Qin Luzi watched them lead the children to a small hall on the second floor. With the two of them following the teachers and children, the staff decided to leave the clock tower and go to the cafeteria instead. Since the zombies were attracted to the battle outside, they would be able to reach that place safely. Without the staff, the number of adults was only 4, while there were 50 children. With so many mouths to feed, it was impossible for the teachers to find enough supplies for them. Thinking about her fiancé's plan for training the children, Zhao Lijai said, "Teacher, I have a suggestion. I don't know if you want to hear it or not." Since she was the one who saved them, the teachers trusted her, and one of them asked, "Comrade, feel free to speak your mind." "My team comes from the Linen base. The base leader is currently looking for talent to teach the children. I believe that if you all go to the base will gladly accept you as teachers. You can work there and receive a monthly salary and supplies," Zhao Lijai said. "Is there a safe place out there?" a teacher asked. Zhao Lijai nodded and replied, "While the base is still in its early stages, we are building a safe place for the survivors." "Can we bring the children with us?" another teacher asked. "The base accepts everyone, including children. If you are unable to fight zombies, you can work at the base. If you have talent or skills, you will earn a higher salary. The base has rules, but as long as you follow them, you won't have to worry about having no food or a place to stay, Zhao Lijai said. When they heard this, hope flashed in the teacher's eyes, while the children looked at them in confusion. They had been frightened for so many weeks and only had a few bites of food and a few sips of water every day. Their bodies had weakened, and they had become timid. The teachers discussed among themselves for a while before one of them said, "Comrade, can you draw a map for us? We will bring the children to the base." Zhao Lijai nodded and took out a pen and a notebook from her space. She drew a simple map for them. As she handed over the map, she said, "You only need to follow the map. The base is not far from Linen University." The teacher took the map and said, "Thank you, comrade." Before leaving, Zhao Lijai took out several boxes of mineral water, several boxes of compressed biscuits, 2 bottles of fever medicine, and several packs of chocolate. "Keep the supplies, and I wish you the best of luck," she said as she left the room. Chapter 316, Dangerous Breaking Through 1. Following behind Zhao Lijai, Qin Luzi was lost in thought. He always thought that his sister-in-law was a stingy and greedy person, as she didn't leave any supplies behind whenever they went to collect supplies. But after he learned that she gave so many supplies to Zun Qi, he started to doubt his own thoughts. Now, seeing her give the supplies to the teachers and children, he realized that she was more complex than he thought. She was not a good person, but she was not a bad person. Even after thinking for a long time, he couldn't figure out her personality at all. After leaving the clock tower, the two of them rejoined the team. When Zhang Yuan saw them return safely, he heaved a sigh of relief. If something had happened to her while the captain was not around, he would be in trouble when the captain returned. Noticing Zhang Yuan's gaze, Zhao Lijai thought about her actions and realized that in the eyes of others, what she did was reckless. Due to owning the spiritual space, she knew that she would survive no matter how dangerous the situation was. But no one knew about her space's special attribute besides her fiancé, so for them to be worried was understandable. Realizing this, she smiled sheepishly at Zhang Yuan and said, "Vice Captain, I'm sorry for making you worry." This was the first time she called him Vice Captain, which surprised everyone. Even without the captain saying anything, they had already accepted the fact that her position was almost on equal footing with Jin Zuyan, so no one said anything when she never called Zhang Yuan by his title. Seeing that she realized her mistake, Zhang Yuan didn't want to make things difficult for her and said, "Sister-in-law, please think twice before you act next time. We didn't know the situation outside the 500-meter radius. For you to go alone was dangerous." Zhao Lijai nodded and replied, "Vice Captain, I understand. I was caught up in the battle and didn't notice the danger. I will be more careful next time." Zhang Yuan looked at her and let out a sigh, no matter what. She was just a little girl who was not even 20 years old. For her to act recklessly was normal. "As long as you understand," he said. Not long after he finished speaking, they heard the roars of zombies coming from the distance, followed by the shaking of the ground. "Damn, what's going on?" Xirokai exclaimed in surprise. Noticing that the zombies lured by their captain might be more than expected, the Wen brothers built a metal platform a few meters from the wall. The Phantom team members leaped onto the platform as it rose higher. When it reached 5 meters from the ground, it stabilized, and they were finally able to see the situation clearly. Outside the school grounds, Jin Zuyan was running in front, followed by tens of thousands of zombies. His initial plan was to lure the nearby zombies. But thinking how bothersome it would be to clear the area one by one, he decided to pull as many zombies as he could. It was better to clean them up all at once. Therefore, it took him a while to return. He was sure that his team would be able to handle this number. After all, they had cleaned up more than 50,000 zombies when they had fewer members. Now, with more members, it was a piece of cake for them to clear up 20,000 to 30,000 zombies. Seeing the metal wall, he bent his knees and leaped onto it. Standing on top of the wall, he smiled and raised his hand. Under him, the zombies raised their rotten arms, trying to pull at him while roaring wildly. Above his head, a massive black flame floated. The temperature increased rapidly as the black flame grew bigger. After more than 10 seconds, Jin Zuyan jumped and threw the black flame toward the zombie horde. The next moment, he unsheathed his longsword and slashed it horizontally. A crescent-shaped fire blade flew toward the black flame at a fast speed. With the fire blade merging with the black flame, its length and width increased several-fold. The 20-meter-long and 3-meter-wide fire blade flew past the zombies, turning them into ashes in an instant. Standing on the high platform, the team members were used to their captain's domineering ability. But for the new members, this display of power was so shocking that Lee Kixuan and Mo Junji couldn't move their gazes away. While Mo Junji's eyes were filled with madness at discovering a treasure, Lee Kixuan's eyes were filled with surprise and confusion. From the information he had gathered about Jin Zuyan after leaving the facility, there was no information regarding his ability at all. So when he saw the black flame, he thought it was an ability Jin Zuyan awakened after the apocalypse. But judging from his power and the amount of energy he possessed, he must have awakened his ability long before the apocalypse. However, if that were the case, there should have been information about him in the facility. He couldn't figure out the reason, and could only put this matter on hold for now. He needed to find more information before he could draw a conclusion about whether the Phantom team was friend or foe. Not knowing what they were thinking, Jin Zuyan jumped onto the metal platform after killing a large group of zombies. He first went to check on his fiancée before asking, "Did something happen while I was gone?" Before Zhao Lijai could say a word, Qin Luzi reported, "Captain, we found around 50 children and 4 teachers in the clock tower just now. Sister-in-law gave them some supplies and a map to the Linen City base." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "We will make arrangements for them later. Clear out the zombies first." Understood. Chapter 317, Dangerous Breaking Through 2. With their captain back, the Phantom team members were no longer as worried as before. While everyone was fighting, Zhao Lijai went to Chen Ji and handed him a handful of ice-type crystal cores. Seeing this, Jiang Lixin asked, "Sister, why did you give us so many crystals? We still have some left." Zhao Lijai checked Chen Ji's wound and said, "Even though the wound doesn't show any mutation signs, Brother Chen's current level won't be able to suppress or expel the zombie virus from his body. He has to break through level 1 to increase his chance of survival." When they heard this, Chen Ji was taken aback. He thought he would be fine after a while, but after hearing her words, he noticed that his limbs were stiffer than before. While the process wasn't as fast, he was indeed slowly turning into a zombie. Realizing this, he lowered his gaze and said, "I understand." "Husband, forcefully breaking through might be dangerous," Jiang Lixin said worriedly. "If I can stay alive and keep my arm, I will take the risk," Chen Ji replied with a smile. Seeing the determination in his eyes, Jiang Lixin stopped trying to persuade him. Zhao Lijai handed the crystal cores to him and said, "Brother Chen, focus your mind and don't worry about anything else. I will stay here to guard you with Sister Jiang. You will be fine." "Okay." As Chen Ji started absorbing the energy from the crystals, Zhao Lijai said, "After absorbing the energy, don't store it directly in your brain. Use the energy to clear the blockage in your meridians and refine your body." Following her instructions, Chen Ji slowly felt the difference. Before, he only focused on absorbing the energy to improve his ability. But now, after using the energy to clear the meridians and strengthen his body, he felt that the amount of energy he could absorb was greater than before. In less than 5 minutes, one crystal had turned into dust. With a stronger physique and wider meridians, it would be easier for the ability user to absorb energy and use it during battle. While he was absorbing the crystal cores, Lee Kixuan was surprised to see how fast his absorption rate was. Even someone with high talent like himself still needed at least 20 minutes to absorb a crystal, so how could someone with average talent absorb the crystal faster than him? As he observed Chen Ji, Feng Yun's gaze was locked on him. When he noticed that Lee Kixuan was observing the crystal cores in Chen Ji's hand, he moved his body to block his gaze. As the gazes met, Feng Yun smiled and asked, "Brother Lei, if you are distracted during battle, you might lose your life, so you should focus on the enemies in front of you." Meeting his cold eyes, Lee Kixuan returned the smile and replied, "When I feel tired, I get distracted easily. I might need to rest now. I can't continue fighting for now." Hearing this, Feng Yun pretended to be surprised and exclaimed, "Brother Lei, I didn't know that you were incapable." The moment he heard those words, Lee Kixuan gritted his teeth. No man would accept being called incapable. He forced a smile and said, "Brother Feng, you should watch your words. I'm very capable, okay? I'm just tired." "Oh, but you said you can't do it anymore," Feng Yun said with doubt. Right now, Lee Kixuan felt that this person was taunting him. If he said he was tired, it was equivalent to admitting that he was incapable. But if he said he was capable, then he couldn't observe Chen Ji and wouldn't be able to find the reason behind his fast absorption rate. After a moment of hesitation, he still said, "I'm not tired, I still can do it." Feng Yun smiled when he heard this and patted his shoulder while saying, "Then focus on the enemies. Don't worry about Brother Chen. With sister-in-law and sister Jiang guarding him, he will be fine." Since he had said so, Li Kixuan could only focus on killing the zombies. As for the other matter, he could figure it out later. There was a lot of time in the future, and he was not in a rush. Meanwhile, Mo Junji overheard their conversation and glanced at Zhao Lijai. He had noticed the difference between the crystal cores he obtained from the zombies and the ones given by her. There were no impurities in the crystals she gave, unlike the crystal cores from the zombies, so the absorption rate was higher and faster. He didn't know where she got the crystals or how she removed the impurities, but he was sure it had something to do with either her space or her water. As a researcher, he was curious about her space and her water-type ability, but without proper tools and machines, even if he wanted to conduct experiments and tests, he couldn't do it now, so he could only hold back his urge to go into the lab. In the midst of various thoughts swirling in the team members' minds, Zhao Lijai was busy guarding Chen Ji. Even though Jiang Lixin was a healer, her healing-type ability was not even level 1, so it would be impossible for her to guide the energy inside her husband's body and help him break through safely. At this moment, Zhao Lijai was placing her fingers on Chen Ji's wrist as she sent her energy into his body, since he was focused on absorbing the energy. He didn't notice an unknown cold energy entering his body. As her energy probed inside, Zhao Lijai was surprised when it came into contact with the zombie virus. She wrapped the virus with her energy and tried to send it into her space. She didn't know if this method was possible, but it wouldn't hurt to try, so after she made up her mind, she thought, collect. Chapter 318, Dangerous Breaking Through 3. The next moment, the zombie virus entered Zhao Lijai's space together with a wisp of her energy. Since the energy disappeared suddenly, it disturbed the energy flow in Chen Ji's body. With the energy going out of control, he spat out a mouthful of blood.
Cough, cough, cough.
Startled by this, Jiang Lixin quickly used her energy to heal her husband. While he was injured, Chen Ji continued absorbing the crystal cores and used the energy to suppress the violent energy inside him. Zhao Lijai was also taken aback and stopped collecting the zombie virus from his body. While this method was faster in removing the zombie virus, it was too dangerous. Therefore, she could only use her energy to heal his injuries and suppress the virus, while Chen Ji focused on breaking through. 2 hours later, a burst of energy waves spread out from Chen Ji's body as he broke through to level 1. Unlike others, his breakthrough was not as smooth as usual. As the energy waves spread out, he suddenly collapsed, and a layer of ice started forming on his skin, slowly covering him. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai turned to her fiancé and shouted, "Brother Yan, we need your help." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan sheathed his longsword and leapt toward them. When he arrived, he grabbed Chen Ji's arm and sent his energy into his body. In a few seconds, the ice covering his body slowly melted until it disappeared completely. While he was transferring his energy into Chen Ji's body, he said, "He is overusing his energy. After resting for a few days, he will be fine." Zhao Lijai nodded, leaned closer to him, and asked, "Brother Yan, you are a fire-type ability user while Brother Chen is an ice-type ability user. Will it damage his organs if you transfer your energy to him like this?" Jin Zuyan nodded and replied, "He will suffer some damage due to the incompatibility, but besides me, no one could transfer the energy fast enough to keep up with the draining." Recalling the green liquid she saw before, Zhao Lijai said, "How about we let Brother Yin Yusheng try?" Since there was a wood-type ability user who could heal others using his energy in his previous life, Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Yusheng, come over and try to transfer your energy to Chen Ji." When everyone heard this, they were stunned. This was the first time they had heard that they could transfer their energy to others. Even though he was skeptical, Yin Yusheng still walked over and asked, "Captain, how can I do it?" "You need to have skin contact with him and then focus your energy into your hand. Afterward, just send the energy into his body. Remember to try it first and don't use too much energy, or you might kill him accidentally," Jin Zuyan said. After hearing this, Yin Yusheng nodded and did as his captain instructed. While he was sending his energy into Chen Ji's body, the little sunflower suddenly popped out from his wrist. Seeing its master transferring energy into another person, it was unhappy. It also needed energy to grow. Rather than letting its master waste his energy on others, it was better to consume it itself. As the sunflower thought of this, it suddenly absorbed Yin Yusheng's energy. Feeling his energy being taken by the sunflower instead, he asked, what are you doing? As if it understood his words, the sunflower used its leaves to touch its thin stalk. 5 minutes later, the sunflower grew a little bit. When it felt full, it opened its mouth and spat at Chen Ji. Unlike the green liquid, this time, it spat out a sticky, transparent liquid. As the liquid touched Chen Ji's skin, it seeped into his body through the pores. The sunflower was a hard-working little flower. Since its master wanted to help this person, it continued spitting at his face.
Spit, spit, spit.
Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched this. Xirokai was so stunned that it took him a while to recover his senses and said, "Damn, this little sunflower is so rude. It's actually spitting at Brother Chen." While everyone was at a loss, Zhao Lijai exchanged glances with Jin Zuyan. At the same time, Mo Junji's eyes lit up as he stared at the little sunflower. At that moment, he only wanted to cut off Yin Yusheng's wrist and take the little sunflower to the lab to experiment on it. Such a rare specimen, it would be a waste not to do some research and find out its benefits. Suddenly, the little sunflower shivered and turned its head. The moment it met Mo Junji's eerie smile, it let out a small yelp and turned into green energy as it hid inside its master's body. "Where did it go?" Mo Junji asked. Before anyone could answer him, Chen Ji finally opened his eyes. He looked at them dazedly and asked, "Am I still alive?" Seeing that he could still ask such a silly question, Jin Zuyan said, "You are not dead yet." Then he stood up and said, "Everyone, clear the zombies before sunset." "Yes, Captain," the members replied in unison. When the sun slowly dipped into the western horizon, the last zombie was killed by them. Jin Zuyan cleaned up the battlefield and burned all the zombies' corpses into ashes before Xirokai and Feng Yun went to collect the crystals. As for the metal wall, Wenmo created a gate and transformed the metal platform into a wall, completely enclosing the school area. "Captain, the entire school area is clear," Qin Luzi said after checking his map. "We will stay here for the night and leave tomorrow morning. Rest and take turns patrolling," Jin Zuyan said. With his order, the members went to find Zhao Lijai and asked for some water to wash off the black blood and rotting flesh from their bodies before taking out self-heating meals and starting to eat. Chapter 319, Superfood. While everyone was eating, the group of school staff watched them from the cafeteria. The school was built on an area of 5,000 square meters, and since the cafeteria was located near the parking lot, they could see what the Phantom team was doing. Qin Luzi noticed the white dots near them and turned his head. The moment the staff saw him looking at them, they quickly squatted down. They had seen how strong that group was and had no plans to follow them. It's just that when they smelled the fragrance of food in the air, they couldn't help but stare at the self-heating meals. While everyone was resting, Jin Zuyan went to check a nearby building. This small building was the guard post. Inside were 3 rooms, each equipped with 4 bunk beds. While the number of beds was far from enough, they were men and could sleep on the floor. Since the rooms were clean, he walked to Zhang Yuan and said, "When everyone is done eating, we will rest in this building." Understood, Zhang Yuan nodded and went to inform the members. Jin Zuyan walked to his fiancée and said, "Aitg, we can sleep in a bed tonight." Zhao Lijai nodded and replied casually, "Okay." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan glanced at her meaningfully but didn't elaborate. When the red moon rose in the sky, everyone went to the guard post. Each woman was given a bed, and the rest of the beds were shared by the men. Zhao Lijai didn't have any particular requirements for her living conditions. She could even sleep on the battlefield full of zombies' corpses, let alone in this clean room. Even though she was sharing the room with the members, she didn't feel awkward at all. After all, they were comrades who had survived a life-and-death battle together. Not long after she lay down on the bed, she saw her fiancé walk over and say, "Aitg, make room for me." She thought he wanted to sit, so she moved over. Unexpectedly, after taking off his jacket, Jin Zuyan lay down beside her and even pulled her into his embrace. The members who shared the room with them quickly turned their bodies and pretended not to see anything. Zhao Lijai poked her fiancé's chest and asked, "Brother Yan, what are you doing?" "I'm sleeping, Jin Zuyan replied with his eyes closed. Seeing his tired face, Zhao Lijai decided to let him be. After all, the one losing face in front of the members was him. Since he didn't care, why should she? With this thought, she leaned on his chest and went to sleep. While everyone was resting, Gu Sheos and Rong Mo finally reached the base with Rong Kinyu. As they hadn't returned directly but went to clear zombies and search for supplies first, their half-day trip was delayed by almost 10 hours. When they arrived, the base had already closed the gate. Standing on top of the wall, the soldiers noticed a car approaching the base. Using military binoculars, one of them checked the car. Seeing that the one driving was Gu Sheo's, the soldier informed his supervisor. Outside the gate, Rong Kinyu was surprised to see the base. While it looked small, the gate was quite strong. It was 5 meters tall, and with people standing at the top of the wall, it seemed the wall's width was at least 2 meters. Even Rong Mo and Gu Sheo's were surprised to see the changes in the base. They had only left for 2 days, but the gate already looked different. It seemed that the policy of hiring ability users and ordinary people to build the base was working really well. "More, the gate is closed. Should we find a place to rest tonight?" Rong Kinyu asked. "There's no need, we will enter the base in a while," Gu Sheo's replied. Not long after, the gate was opened, and when Hanley walked out, followed by 2 guards. Seeing him, Gu Sheo's lowered the window and said, "Good evening, Comrade Wen." When Hanley nodded at him and said, "Comrade Gu, we have to inspect you and your team before allowing you to enter the base." "No problem," Gu Sheo's agreed readily. As one of the guards was female, Rong Mo didn't have to wait 2 hours. After the inspection, they were allowed to enter the base. Before leaving, Gu Sheo's opened the trunk and said, "Comrade Wen, we brought back some supplies. You can check it out." When Hanley's eyes lit up at his words, without pretending to be polite, he walked over to check the truck. When he looked inside, he saw several sacks and boxes. Curious, he opened one sack and saw white quinoa inside. Compared to other grains, quinoa is a complete protein source, often called a superfood due to its nutritional and health value. It also has a mild nutty flavor, and when cooked properly, a light and fluffy texture. If they were able to collect several granaries of quinoa, they wouldn't have to worry about running out of food for a long time. With this thought, when Hanley took a sack and asked, "Comrade Gu, can you tell us where you found this quinoa?" Hearing this, Gu Sheo's smiled and replied, "Well, I have to inform my captain first before I can make a decision whether to tell you or not." Since the grain was found by him, it was reasonable to report to his team first. With the new policy, even if the Phantom team brought back the grains, they still had to submit 20% of the items they found to the base as an S-grade team. Thinking about this, when Hanley didn't insist and said, "Then we will wait for your news." Gu Sheo's nodded and added, "According to the rules, we have to submit 20% of the supplies we find outside. You can take whatever you want." "Can we take the grains?" When Hanley asked. "No problem." After taking 20% of the supplies, Gu Sheo's handed 2 packs of candy to the guard as a gift before driving away. After they left, the guard closed the gate, while Wen Hanley went to report to Zun Qi. Chapter 320, Young Ability Users. Early the next morning, the Phantom team woke up at dawn and finished checking their equipment and had breakfast when the sun rose on the eastern horizon. Zhao Lijai went to find her fiancé and said, "Brother Yan, what do you think we should do about the children and the teachers?" Jin Zuyan thought for a moment and said, "Let's meet them first." "Okay." The 2 of them went to the clock tower and saw the children were still sleeping in the hall. As for the teachers, they woke up the moment they heard the footsteps. After the apocalypse, they never slept peacefully at night. They often woke up in the middle of the night due to nightmares or fear. Therefore, besides looking pale, they also had huge black circles under their eyes. When the teachers saw Zhao Lijai, they heaved a sigh of relief. One of them stood up and asked, "Comrade, do you need anything from us?" "Teacher, this is my fiancé, also the captain of my team. I have told him about your situation. Today, we came to discuss something with all of you," Zhao Lijai said. Hearing her words, the teacher's eyes lit up, and one of them asked, "Comrade, are you going to escort us to the base?" Jin Zuyan shook his head and replied, "It's impossible for my team to escort you and the children. Even if we want to help you, we have our own mission to do, so you have to depend on yourselves to go to the base, but we can give you weapons and help you find cars or buses." The moment they heard this, they were disappointed, but they understood the situation. Having weapons and a vehicle would make their trip easier. The teachers exchanged glances and one of them said, "Thank you for your help, comrade. We will go by ourselves." Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "You should wake up the children and eat something first. My team will prepare the vehicles and weapons. When you and the children are ready, just find us in the parking lot." "Okay." After leaving the clock tower, Jin Zuyan gathered his members and said, There are 50 children and 4 teachers in the clock tower. We will send them to the base, so we need to find 2 buses. Hearing this, Zhang Yuan asked, Captain, who will escort them? We won't escort them. We will give them weapons and let them go by themselves, Jin Zuyan replied. The members exchanged glances, but no one said a word. After all, this time they were going to the capital to find their family members. Although the chances of the children and teachers arriving at the base safely were low, they wouldn't waste time escorting them. What if their families were in danger while they were wasting time going back and forth? With this thought, the members agreed with their captain's decision. Old Qin, Feng Yun, the 2 of you go find the buses. Wen Mo, Wen Kai, the 2 of you make 4 blades and 4 daggers, Jin Zuyan said. After he said this, Li Kixuan suddenly raised his hand. Seeing this, he gestured for him to talk. Captain, I don't have any family left. How about I escort the children back to the base? He asked. Hearing this, Mo Junji raised his eyebrows. From what he knew, Li Kixuan should have a grandfather, father, stepmother, and several step-siblings. Claiming to have no family left, was he cursing them? No one knew what he was thinking, so the members gave Li Kixuan a sympathetic gaze. Jin Zuyan thought for a moment and said, Okay, you will go back to the base with them. With him staying at the base, even if they couldn't return before the second rain, his power should be able to increase the survival chances of the people in the base. After the brief meeting, Qin Luzi and Feng Yun went out to find the buses. Since the school was located at the town center, it was easy to find a bus. They found 2 buses and filled up the fuel at a small gas station. Afterward, Feng Yun stored the buses in his space. Since they were already there, they went to check the gas station. They took away the oil drums stored in the warehouse and filled the drums with gasoline. There were a total of 200 drums. Each drum could hold around 208 liters of oil. After they finished collecting the supplies in the warehouse and minimarket, the 2 of them returned to the school. When they came back, the children and the teachers were already waiting for them. Qin Luzi checked his map and was surprised to find out that the green dots in his map were actually the children and not the teachers. Out of 50 children, there were 6 children who had awakened their abilities. He pointed at the children and said, Captain, those children are ability users. Jin Zuyan and the team members were taken aback by his words. The children he pointed out were only 7 or 8 years old. If not for his map, just looking at how timid they were, no one would realize that the children had abilities. The potential of the children was limitless. Unfortunately, they were young and didn't understand how to use their abilities. Therefore, lots of children who had awakened their abilities still died prematurely at the beginning of the apocalypse. Thinking about his plan, Jin Zuyan turned to Li Kixuan and said, Since they are ability users, when you reach the base, inform Zun Qi about them and ask him to take good care of them. Hearing this, Zhang Yuan asked, Captain, are you planning to recruit the children? Jin Zuyan didn't give him a confirmative reply and said, That would depend on their behavior. Even if they are ability users, our team won't accept those with timid personalities and weak willpower. While they were discussing the children's future, the teachers heard their words and noted down the children who had awakened their abilities. As their teachers, they sincerely hoped they would have a backing and survive this living hell.